Yeah, if you want to kick it off, you just came out of baby retirement, so this is the first time you've gotten to talk to like normal people.
Yeah. Holy shit.
I didn't expect you to agree with that.
Words About Books is a poorly spoken podcast. I am, of course, Nate, and it feels like it has been forever. And I guess to the people listening to this podcast, it was only 2 weeks ago, but everything that we released in May, we recorded in April. So it's been like a month for me. So I'm out of baby retirement now. And of course, I'm joined as always by my co-host Ben. And today, I can't wait. We're going to be discussing Promise of Blood. I'm so psyched. I read it was like 500 pages. It's crazy, Ben. What's up?
So while you were out on baby retirement, I got an emergency message from our boy J Key. And he needs us to read a book. So throw out everything you just did. We're doing Beyond the Galaxy, the war between the Teku and Krad. It's an anthology series which J Key contributed to.
Well, it's a good thing I read that. I just happened to have read that book as well.
It was on everybody's list.
Yeah.
I mean, it was, we were all talking about it.
And now, what was that about, all joking aside?
Yeah, so all joking aside, back in what seems like an eternity, speaking of like being gone for a month, we recorded, I went through all our stuff and I looked this up to figure out the timeline. We recorded an episode on The Adventures of Duke Lagrange, How to Pick Up Women with a Drunken Space Ninja by J Key. We recorded that in August of 2020.
Oh my God.
I was surprised to find out we didn't release it until November.
Oh my God.
Of 2020.
I did not know that we did that in August.
Yeah, for us, it's been quite some time since we did the Duke Lagrange episode, but for everybody else, it's only been a few months. And so a little bit after we released the episode, the author of the book, J Key, found it. And that made us a little concerned and nervous because
we were not very kind to it.
Yeah, we didn't like the book, and we weren't very subtle. We weren't very subtle about the fact that we didn't like the book. But fortunately, J Key is an amazing sport and a really nice guy, and we had a pleasant exchange with him, and he was pretty cool about it. And then while Nate was out, he messaged us again and offered to buy us a book, which was Beyond the Galaxy, the war between the Teku and Krad. It was a short story anthology in a shared universe that he had contributed a short story to. And he wanted us to check it out. He said it might give us a different view on his writing, and I figured, we gave him an unfavorable review, I guess. Well, definitely. And
yes, to be fair, we liked the first 5 chapters and the last chapter, but then we were not so nice.
Okay, a couple of things. J Key bought us the book free and clear. He said he did not expect a review. He just thought we might want to check it out, and that was exceedingly nice of him.
Hold on. He bought the book? Did he buy it just for you?
Yeah.
You son of a...
Yeah, so he bought us one copy of the book, and since I was the one operating the Twitter account at this point, I took the free copy from J Key.
I had to spend some of my baby formula money to buy this.
Captain Four Bedrooms over here could afford it, so I made him buy his own copy. Here's the thing about that I do want to quickly mention is all the proceeds go to charity for this book. They all go to a charity called the Tech Bridge Girls, which I looked into it. It's a really good organization. It seems like they do a lot of good work. They have really high ratings on all the charity sites. And so I think it's a really cool thing for a sci-fi anthology to donate to. And the fact that all proceeds for the book, I looked it up, like literally all proceeds for the book go to this charity. I think that alone makes it a lot easier decision to check out. The idea behind this anthology is that it seems kind of like a writing exercise that was taken to completion. So the book starts out with an introduction that says, in September of 2019, a group of writers descended on the beautiful city of Seattle, Washington with a common goal. Together they spent 2 days inside of the famous Museum of Pop Culture and a community workspace building a new science fiction universe from scratch. They developed 2 new alien races, thought about how life on Earth would come to an end at the hands of these beings, and pondered what sort of technology these aliens might possess. All of this brainstorming took place intending to create a collection of short stories that you now hold in your hand or are now listening to a podcast about. The universe itself it sounds to me like it was hammered out mostly over the course of a weekend. And then for a few months after that, the writers went back and worked on their own stories, and then they were compiled into this volume. And you may have noted that the city they met in was Seattle, Washington, which will feature prominently in the book, or as the location where the aliens first land. And it's kind of an inside joke throughout the book. Seattle just keeps coming up. A number of stories are set in Seattle, so that helps. It's very, if you're from Seattle, I guess, check it out. Tell me, I haven't been, unfortunately.
I have.
Did you enjoy it?
It was all right.
It was all right.
So on our honeymoon, we ended up going to like 3 different places in the span of like a week, and Seattle was the last place that we went to, and it was all right.
Okay, which 3 places did you go?
We went to Vegas, and then we went to Disney World. Or Disneyland, sorry,
you
the
know
one
what?
in California.
You and I are very different people. Because I could tell you right now, I would have infinitely more fun sitting in any random coffee shop in Seattle than I would have in either Las Vegas or Disney World.
Although we had friends in Vegas, so that's kind of an unfair comparison. We didn't do much in Vegas that was about Vegas. I did enjoy the intro or the forward on how they came up with this shared universe, and I was like, that reminds me of when I went to, I guess we went to Sheetz. Took me back to going to that.
We went to Sheetz in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, and we hammered out Edenverse. And you can kind of see the difference in the 2 anthologies there. One was done over like the fancy microbrews and coffees of Seattle, and the other was done over the fried cheese of Pennsylvania.
Delicious breakfast sandwiches, the best I've ever had.
Send me a gift card, Sheetz. You don't even have to sponsor the podcast. We literally want the food. Let's cut out the middleman here.
All right, you want to dive right into this, or?
Yeah, I do. I think first I want to say just a couple of things about it in general before we talk about the individual short stories. Is I did like it. Overall, I did like it. It's not my genre. I will say that. A lot of these authors, and I think the press that published it, specialize in post-apocalyptic fiction. So there's kind of like a downer tone to a lot of these stories, which is not something I seek out, but I can respect it when it's done well. And so I did enjoy the anthology, but somebody who really is into post-apocalyptic fiction would probably enjoy it more. So just sort of keep that in mind as we discuss. Some of the things we have problems with maybe are exactly what you're looking for in a story. With that, I'm ready to jump in.
First one, pull up my notes. Botched! Oh, yes. By Cameron Coral. Ben, do you want me to explain what Botched is? To the best of my ability?
I wrote you a little summary if you want.
Did, but
you can go.
Fine. So, Botched, I thought, initially anyway, was a really great introduction to this shared universe. There's a bunch of cyborg creatures.
He's not reading my summary.
Who used human DNA to boost their AI performance, and they got senses from us too. and they basically enslaved a bunch of humans to use them as fuel for the ship. And the ship, it seems, is run by an AI, but later stories seem to indicate the ship is a living creature. Anyway.
I think I figured this out. I figured that part out. Do you want me to go into it now?
Let me finish reading your description, adding flavor text from my...
You're not reading my description at all. My description is much less condescending. I don't know why you're...
Fine. How about you just read your description, and then I'll be condescending afterwards.
We're introduced to an alien species of cyborg creatures who have enslaved humans to use them as fuel for their ship. The aliens are humanoid cyborgs who we're told also have incorporated human DNA into their own genetic makeup. Despite being partially human, they really dislike humans. And our main character, Mercuria, whose job it is to shuttle humans who are no longer capable of providing fuel for the ships down to a planet where they will live out their lives without further burdening the ship's resources. All the other aliens hate Mercuria and think she's totally lame. Eventually, Mercuria has to choose between leaving the humans in her charge with a very slim chance of survival or being exiled from her species. Was that a good summary? Do you agree?
I agree. Although, all right, so first impressions, I was like, okay, cool. It establishes what the Krad are. They're like these cyborg creatures, and it establishes what they do, and it establishes that humans are kind of just they have some sort of gene or something that powers the ship, and then eventually it runs out and they get shot off into space, usually. But this particular Krad ship, it shuttles you. This is a criticism that's also going to come up when we do get back to reading Promise of Blood. I feel like you should probably establish the rule before you establish the exception to that rule. Is that just me?
I agree with you, but this is... So, we're comparing a novel to an anthology. The writer...
No. I'm comparing books to books, Ben. They all look the same to me.
Yeah, but So the writer of this story, Cameron Corll, probably didn't know where in the book this story would fall. And I don't think... the story is not inconsistent with the lore. I do think it fits. What we really would have benefited from, right up front, is if we could have gotten maybe... I guess some of the flavor of the post-apocalyptic genre is finding out sort of how the apocalypse happened. So maybe you don't want to do this up front, but I could have really used a description right up front of just these are the Krad, these are the Teku, this is the difference.
Yes. I still don't really know the difference, Ben, and I've read the entire book.
I agree with you on that. It's not as big a problem for me as it is for you, but from what I gather, I'll give you that description up front. I guess spoilers for later. The Krad and the Teku are both sentient, semi-organic spaceships.
Yeah, I didn't know that for the longest time because I thought that the Krad were these cyborgs.
The Teku and Krad both need... The word is fuel, but I'm going to say food. And that food comes in the form of biomass from humans with a particular gene. They make the best food for these ships. The means of extracting the biomass is the main difference between the Teku and Krad to me, as far as I have gathered. The Teku seem a little bit more benevolent, but still very morally gray. They seem to be trying to achieve a consensual symbiosis, and the Krad are more like the Borg from Star Trek, where they just assimilate and take, and they put people in pods and just drain them of all their life force.
Except for this one.
Hear me out. The way this fits, there's a mention in one of the stories, and it goes by at super speed. So I understand if you didn't catch it. At some point, they mention, I think it's in Blue Pearl. They mention that you didn't just find sentient rocks out there. I think there are true Teku and Krad ships that are living sentient beings, but then there are also ships that are controlled by an AI that are used as part of like the fleet of the Teku and Krad. I don't think the Teku and Krad necessarily, I don't think every ship is a Teku or Krad.
I have no evidence that that is untrue or that it is true.
But the point is that the cyborgs featured in Botched are Krad, but they are not the ship Krad. They are They are beings that were assimilated into the Krad collective.
I have no evidence of that.
That is all throughout the book. That they bring in different workers other than humans.
The cyborgs don't appear until the last 2 stories, though. And again, you say the Krad just take and take and take, which is evident in a lot of other stories. And again, it might have just been the fact that maybe they shouldn't have selected this to be the introduction, but humans are just roaming free on this ship in like the lower levels, and they are shuttled to a planet rather than fired out of a pod. So I don't get that immediate, oh, Krad are bad vibe the way that maybe I probably should have, and definitely is more present in other stories.
Yeah, it was. So I will say it's a very different Krad experience than the other stories. I don't know if we chalk that up to not everybody was necessarily on the same page.
Yeah, I would probably agree that, and we can maybe ask Jay Key, but it feels like not everyone was on the same page, or perhaps I don't know. There's a lot of my criticism that will be popping up is not about the individual story, but more of how it fits with the other stories, and there's just a disconnect between most of the stories with one another.
I don't necessarily disagree with you, but we did come away with different opinions about how much we enjoyed reading this book. Would you say you have a generally negative opinion?
I think we're both giving it 3 stars on Goodreads, but you're interpreting that as more positive, and I'm more like, it's alright.
I said in my Goodreads review, I wanted to give it 3.5. I want to say I like it, and I would read another one. Would you read another one?
Well, I would, okay, so if I'm not being forced to, I would read select stories from Volume 2, if Volume 2 ever existed. I guess I would take some of the stories I didn't like and just like skip those authors next time. That might be a little mean, but I guess that's also the point of an anthology. You can skip around. So I would probably just read like 5 or 6 stories in Volume 2.
I think I would read everything. I would give everybody a chance. I don't think any author failed completely.
Let's make a caveat there. I have a newborn child, so I've got to be really I've got to really ration
That's
my
fair.
time.
That's a fair point. That's a fair point. I read more anthologies than you do. I think I read more short stories than most people I know.
You definitely do.
I can tell you, like, in terms of the good story to bad story ratio of an anthology, this is actually pretty high. Like, the fact that there are 1 or 2 stories in here that didn't work for me, that is usually much, much higher.
Oh, yeah. I mean, we just reading The Machine of Death, it was like, we found 1 that we liked. And I read 5 of them.
We're spending a lot of time on this, but I think it is good to discuss up front, is that there's 2 kind of ways to look at this book because it is an anthology. You have to judge the story on its own terms. Is it a good story? Then you have to judge the story on part of the shared universe. Does it do a good job of contributing to the shared universe? And I think that's where they vary a little more. Like, most of these are good short stories on their own terms.
Right.
But they either contribute contradictory material or confusing material. And so while other stories, I think, do feature cyborg Krad, and so that was obviously a part of the discussion, this person was not wrong to include that in their story, it's confusing when you're presented it up front and you're trying to figure out what's going on. That
right.
Krad
Absolutely.
the Krad are ships?
Yeah.
I thought they were these cyborgs, so...
So part of that might just be maybe this should have been put in the middle. It shouldn't have been the first story.
I don't know that there's a better first story. Well, as we go through them, you let me know which one you think would be a better first story.
Yeah, you might be right on that one.
So real quick, botched. Main character is Mercuria. She is a Krad who is sympathetic to humans, which makes her an outcast amongst the other Krad. And eventually she has to make this choice of, do I save the humans because it's the right thing to do, or do I accept this opportunity to rejoin my people and have some respect? And she ultimately chooses to save the humans. It's a very, I would say, well-written, sort of one of the good ones stories where a bad guy has to make an ethical choice and become a good guy. The dialogue is strange.
Agreed.
The one thing that's weird is that Mercuria is consistently bullied at like a high school level. Like literally there is
They're
a
in the
scene
cafeteria. They all have a
in the
laugh at her
cafeteria.
expense.
Yeah, and they're laughing at her. This one guy's like, he's got big Chad energy going on. He's like, huh, Mercuria, you like humans, you human lover. She's like, shut up, Chad. I don't like him that much, Chad. And he's like, oh, look at her. She's gonna cry. And I'm like, are these interconnected cyborgs, or are these like, what human DNA did you guys add to your makeup here?
That's a good point. That's funny. They're too busy looking for the one strand of our DNA that fuels their ship that they just ignore the rest of our DNA that makes them a bunch of Chad assholes.
I didn't know if it was supposed to be funny or not. I chuckled. Because I liked the story overall, I would say it was charming. I have no idea if it was intentional or not. I don't know why that dialogue was the way it was, but it's interesting. Other than that, yeah, I think we should probably move on because we got a lot of these to get through.
Oh, yeah. Tell me about At Dawn.
At Dawn. Okay, this one, At Dawn begins with two girls running for their lives. One of them is captured, but the other escapes into the woods where she is taken in by a mysterious priest. Fast forward a couple of decades, and the girl who was taken in by the priest is now acting as a priestess. Her main job is to train a generation of girls to go off with a generation of boys onto the ships. A great send-off feast is about to begin when she returns to her chambers to find that her friend from all those years ago, who was captured, is not only still alive, but has joined the dreaded resistance, and shows the priestess proof that the girls she's training will die horribly on those ships. The priestess needs to make a difficult choice: to disobey the people she owes everything to, or to save the girls she's devoted her life to training. So what'd you think?
Yeah. Well, we both had the same reaction because I know I texted you. I think mine was, that's it? It starts out, it's building up some tension, you know. They have to sneak around. They have to sneak into the old archive to find this video of the Krad ship that crashed however many, like 2,000 years ago or whatever, that had people pods in it. And
this is part of establishing there is a consistent timeline. So the first harvest we initially know about is in 2020, and the next harvest is about to happen.
And you know what? I believe it based on this was written in 2019. They had no idea of realizing that 2020 would be as bad as it was. So, you know,
2020 was a gold mine for the post-apocalyptic genre.
They see the old Krad ship that crashed. They saw people pods, and they're like, okay, yeah, these girls are going to just be brutally murdered. They're just going to be liquefied and fed into the ship's reactor or whatever the hell. They're not going to be taken to Earth 2 or whatever. I remember that detail. There was an Earth 2.
The Krad came down with a story that the Earth was dying and that they were here to save humanity and take them to a better place.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up because the Teku also had that story, and I guess my question is, do you think the authors knew that story was bullshit and not true because 2,000 years later, Earth seems to be doing just fine? I'm not sure if they knew that story was true or false.
Well, here's the thing. I was going to talk about that because if aliens came down and told me Earth was dying, I need to get on the ship. We need to go right now. Don't think about it. I'd be like, no. I mean, Earth isn't like the best it's ever been, but it's a pretty far cry from being uninhabitable. But
Right.
in all honesty, dude, I have this same criticism of Elon Musk. I really don't like all these Mars people who are like, yeah, we're going to go to Mars. We need to go to Mars because the Earth is
We gotta
screwed.
get to much more habitable Mars.
Yeah, that's my main thing with all.
Atmosphere.
Oh, there is this like sub cult of people who are like the Earth is dying. We got to escape it to a corpse. There is pretty much no scenario, barring something knocking the Earth out of its orbit or the sun exploding, in which it is easier to terraform and travel to another planet versus just improve the Earth. Do I fault this story for that take? No, because that's a take that people have in the real world.
I just want to know if the authors knew that was a load of horseshit on the aliens' part.
Yes, they did. Obviously, they did.
Okay. All right.
Obviously, they did because it's implied that it's in many stories that it's a mistake to get on these ships.
Well, it definitely is a mistake to get on those ships. I think in a later story, I wasn't so sure that, and maybe we'll get to that. Maybe it's just because I'm in a fugue.
It's problematic that it is said that the Teku are lying to the humans as well. That's the thing. I wondered if that was a mistake almost that didn't get corrected.
Because they're trying. Because again, that's a problem of characterization, and we'll get into that. But Teku are supposed to be the kinder of the two.
The Teku are supposed to be honest, I guess. And so that was the problem. Is I wondered because I think the story we're both thinking of is the Amish one.
I was thinking of Vanishing Apex, Fading Apex.
Oh, that's right. They do say it's the Teku in that.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's a whole different ball of wax. So let's talk about At Dawn by Lindsay Pogue.
Yeah, let's talk about At Dawn. So again, going back to what I was saying, there was some tension where it's like, okay, we got to sneak around, we got to find the evidence. Maybe the father of this religious cult isn't actually he doesn't have noble intentions for the main character, who is his adopted daughter, and then she decides, I'm gonna escape and I'm gonna take all these chosen, the people who are going to be loaded onto the ship and massacred, and we're going to run away. I was like all on board. I was like, okay, there's so many ways that could go wrong. They got to sneak out like 48 people. That's going to take a lot of effort. Maybe some of them don't want to. Oh, it's over. Okay. That was a letdown.
Man, I was like, man, this is a lot of pages to get to the halfway mark. This is going to be like a little novella. And
right.
then of course it ends. And this is similar to some of the stuff we read in Machine of Death. Everything's good. All the writing's good. I'm interested. I want more. Great story, great writing. It almost ends on a like to be continued. And yes. I understand the arc that we were going for. The arc was about the priestess having to come to the realization that she had been lied to and to do the right thing versus the easy thing. And the story ends when that choice has been solidified in her mind and she took an action. And I think that was a good thought on how to end it. I would have liked to see a more definitive action.
I think that she should have done something with the father.
Yeah. Moving the girls down to meet the resistance is the final action. That's not an action that can't be taken back. She could still back out at this point. If, like you said, she had a confrontation with the priest where she had to like beat him with a baseball bat or something, or kill him even to escape, right. That's a no turning back point.
Right.
That solidifies her actions in reality.
Yeah, it needed a point of no return, and it needed an ending. And like I said, it was it was building tension. I was like, oh, they're trying to sneak out a whole ton of people. How is that going to go? Oh, it's over. And I think I actually texted you and said, now I know how my wife feels after reading Eden, because she was very upset that she didn't get any more of the Ayami story.
You specifically texted me to tell me, now I know how my wife felt after reading your story.
Yeah.
Thank you. So yes, I have some sympathy for this story. No, in all seriousness, I liked it. I think, though this wound up, because of the end, it wound up not being one of my favorite stories. She is a good author. I'd be interested in a sequel to this story. I want to know where this character goes. I'd have been interested in this if it were a novella. I think it would have been a perfectly fine novella. Just show me the whole adventure.
Right.
Would you read a sequel?
I think this would be one where I would read the sequel. Yeah, because I need to know where it goes. If there was a volume 2 and she wrote for it, and it was a direct sequel to this, I would read it.
At noon.
At noon.
Do the Twilight thing where it's like Twilight, New Moon, at dawn, at noon, at
dawn 2, Dawn Harder.
Dawn Harder. Oh, God. Heart of the Teku by Heather Lee Dyer. In this story, we're introduced to a young girl who has sneaked. Is it sneaked or snuck? I use them interchangeably.
Sneaked?
I say snuck. I'm not irregular verbs, man. I don't know. English is weird. So anyway, this young girl is stealthing her way up to the upper levels of the ship to try to catch a glimpse of her birth mother, who lives on the nicer upper level of the ship, reserved for those humans who are still worth something. The ship speaks to the girl and tells her it is time to leave and that she needs to stop going up there. And I'm going to end the summary there because that's the point where I was like, I'm sold. I'm hooked. Ship's talking to her. I need to know more.
The main character finds out from the ship, or no, she finds out from the mechanic on the ship that's like, yep, we're going to crash. We're going to die. And then she goes to talk to the ship and is like, hey, ship.
She finds out from the geneticist.
The geneticist. Whatever,
Your confusing story.
She finds out from some guy. And the guy is like, we're gonna die. And then she's like, hey, Teku lady, Coral, do you mind, like, not dying for a moment? Like, averting your course very slightly and then having everyone get into safe areas of your ship before you crash and kill us all? And then they did, and most people were safe. The end.
Okay, I'm gonna elaborate on that because you knew I was, as you were saying it, you knew I was just sitting there like, no, that's not right. Okay, so she finds out from the geneticist that the ship did an evasive maneuver to avoid a Krad ship, and that took her dangerously off course. And now she doesn't have enough to make it back to Earth to get more people for more fuel. So basically the ship's going to die. And the ship has tried to steer a course to a habitable world to at least save the human passengers, but she no longer has enough energy to decelerate, and they're going to crash into the ship, or they're going to crash into the planet a lot more violently than originally intended, and probably killing everyone on board. And I will admit, it is a little...
You said, I think your words to me were, they solved it with the most obvious solution possible.
Yeah, so the girl goes to the heart of the Teku. She goes to, like, where the Teku exposes its vulnerabilities. It's its weak point. And she proposes a plan to the ship of, why don't you just harvest some more fuel from the people? And I was expecting, and what kind of maybe needed to happen here was like, that will kill them.
And then they have to make the choice of, like, you know, it'll kill them, but it might save countless others.
It might save someone. They have to make a sacrifice, but it wound up not being that severe. It's like, it'll make them tired.
Yeah.
And I was like, push the button. Do it. Obviously do that. Why are we not doing that? And they do that. and they survive, and the ship crashes, but she manages to save the ship's core, meaning maybe the ship can be reborn.
Oh, is that what I was supposed to get from that? I thought she has got the core as like a we're gonna put this in a museum or like a shrine and thank you or something.
No, I thought the ship would continue to live. Like the ship saved them, and she saved the ship. Boys, try saying that 3 times fast. I thought that was a tender moment. What saves this story for me is the relationships between the characters. The plot is kind of paper thin. It moves very quickly, and the resolution is kind of weak. But in that same quick span of time, the relationship between the main character, the geneticist, and the ship did hook me. I found it very interesting and very charming.
I'll agree that the dialogue is the best part of this story, and I enjoyed it.
It just didn't. It couldn't. The tender moments couldn't save it for you.
I didn't know that was a tender moment.
It wasn't. Yeah, because you have a child, sir. You should be more sensitive now.
Okay, so I have a newborn. There's a difference. Okay, I'm pretty sure
there's a difference. Temple of the Dogs by Zach Bohannon and Jay Thorne. A man has been designated with several others to be marooned on a planet as he is no longer usable as fuel. The journey to the planet is going to be done in drop pods, which are notoriously unsafe. There is a chance he could die on this journey, but he is more than ready. We learn that his wife and child died during childbirth. He resents the ship itself and the doctor whose care his wife was under. And while his drop pod does indeed fail, he survives the crash. He is left to try to find his way to the only human settlement with broken equipment. Along the way, he encounters the ship's doctor, and she has a child with her. The man reluctantly agrees to help them, but at a great cost.
All right, so real quick, I did want to mention, I think this was the first time that other aliens were explicitly mentioned, just like in passing.
Botched. I mean,
those were Cyborg Krad.
I get it, technically, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about aliens that are neither Krad nor Teku.
Yeah, I don't think that stood out to me, but
it stood out to me because he was like, oh, it was a humanoid that was like a different color and had this and this, and I highlighted it and went, wait, are there other aliens here? So that's why it stood out to me. And it turns out, yes, there are a lot of other aliens, but we don't really spend a lot of time with them. Anyway, you like this story.
I liked it. So it's a little predictable. Like I kind of knew what was going to happen as soon as like the main pieces were laid out. Like as soon as I find out that the guy is going down to this planet and he doesn't care if he lives or dies, and they set up that he blames this doctor for his wife's death, I knew exactly what was going to happen, beat for beat. Other than that, and that's not really a criticism. I mean, that maybe that's good foreshadowing and setup that I knew it was going to happen. But other than being a little predictable, this was kind of the first story I encountered in this anthology that I thought stood entirely on its own. I could see this published outside of this anthology. Like I could see this in a year's best sci-fi. It did a good enough job of being self-contained. It didn't rely too heavily on the shared universe, which maybe that's a cheat. I don't know. It didn't. I give this an A for individual story. I don't know what I'd give it for contribution to the anthology in terms of like building out the lore in the universe.
It really doesn't.
Yeah. It didn't really attempt to.
Yeah, not everything has to. At least okay, so the thing is, at least it doesn't contradict anything we already knew.
Yeah. So I'd say like A story. Good short story. I'd give you maybe a C on contributing to the shared universe. But again, I don't know quite the dynamic of what these stories were supposed to do. I don't know if the goal was to just create a universe where we could tell some stories or to continue to evolve that universe over the course of our stories. So I don't know, but I liked it. It worked for me.
This is one where, again, I wanted more story, which I guess is, if that's my only complaint, it's a good complaint to have. I wanted to read more. I would have been fine with this being like a novella almost, where you could flesh out the character interactions more. Because of the nature of the short story, the pacing had to be so tight, It was like, no, I hate you. You're the doctor who killed my wife and my child. And then, like, a page later, it's like, sometimes doctors, they try their best and they still lose people. Here, have my oxygen. I'm going to die now.
I don't...
Like, wow, that was a change of heart pretty quick. Shit.
So, I think that's a valid take, I guess, but I disagree. Like, I don't think I'd change anything about it. And the reason I say that is because I don't think, or at least I got the impression that deep down he knew that. He was just angry. I don't think he really, like, he blamed the doctor, but it was just a raw emotion. He knew that it was a high-risk pregnancy because in space they're bombarded with radiation. He knew that the doctor obviously wasn't trying to kill his wife and child, and he just had to blame somebody. He just had to do something with that anger. And then when he sees her trying to save a child, he's just confronted with the obvious truth that she's not a bad person. She's just in a bad situation, same as him. It worked for me, but I can understand maybe with a little bit more time, he could have developed that more and made it more explicit. Maybe I read that in on my own.
I can see why you would think that. Again, I don't read a lot of short stories. Stories that are this short.
I don't think there's any right or wrong answers here. It's just, it doesn't work for you or does it not.
I would read, again, if there's a volume 2 with these same exact authors, I'd read from them. They hooked me. I'm sure they do a good job.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know if you caught it, but I think this one is written by the guys who put this whole thing together.
Oh, I got that.
So I think they also run the press.
So what you're saying is I have them to blame for any continuity issues.
Boy, you were just making friends right and left, aren't you?
Yeah. I'm just saying that if you guys want to invite us. No, I'm kidding. All right, go on to the Nirvana.
I wrote a post-apocalyptic anthology once. I could be.
It averaged a total of 3 stars between the two of its authors.
It did. Oh, God. Okay. The Nirvana by Courtney Harrell. A 15-year-old crew of human technicians aboard a Krad ship is working when their leader is summoned to fix a plumbing issue in a restricted area. The restricted area is for a chosen few who are summoned to live in luxury and paradise. Suspiciously, once someone leaves, they only send repeated and generic messages back to their family. In exchange for the crew leader's service, she is allowed to choose 2 people to ascend to this paradise. After making her choice,
shitty thing to do.
After making her choice and bidding the people farewell, she learns the horrible secret about what actually happens in the restricted area.
The ship is just being a dick. Hey, you know...
That was such a passive-aggressive reward, wasn't it?
Yeah, hey, I'm going to reward you by letting you choose 2 people to get to ascend.
Wow.
You didn't have to do that.
No, she's like, I could have just paid you. Could have given you space bucks to spend at the space canteen.
Yeah, so I liked this story after it got going, and I made the comment that the character almost feels like Allison, so it's like Allison in space.
To clarify, Allison from the book we wrote?
Yes, my bad. Allison from Edenverse. All 2 of you who are listening who also read that book.
Yeah, literally no one knows what you're talking about. Yeah. I'm the only person who gets that reference.
My bad. But the thing is, it doesn't work so much as an anthology story versus like a standalone, because I already know what's happening. You've already established that people are used as fuel for these ships, so we already know that they're not ascending, they're going to pods. They're turned into space goo. But yeah, she builds a little robot man to help her with maintenance around the ship, and later on it starts fighting for her.
I could have done without the robot man.
What? That was her Banshee. Come on. Also from Edenverse.
So I got a pet peeve with a couple of these stories where they're very action heavy, and the descriptions of the action get a little too intricate. Like, we spend a little too much time saying somebody is standing here and the other person is standing there, and then their arm is moving, and then the leg moves, and then they swing, and then the person ducks and rolls, and then a character whose name I forgot does a thing. And that's how I feel when some of these action scenes really kick off. It's like, okay, I've been reading this story for 4 pages. You said 5 names. I don't know who any of them are. I don't remember what they do or what their thing is. And it was, I don't like the action.
Oh, was I supposed to remember the characters of this story? Because I don't. I remember main character girl and her sidekick robot, and then she had a bunch of mechanics who, some of whom died, some of whom didn't.
That was the thing at the end. I was like, so there was cool stuff. Like, I liked the imagery. This is where we get like the first like Krad zombie. Apparently the Krad like to shove tubes into corpses and use them as puppets, which, yeah, that's metal. But then the corpse starts fighting. Sorry, I'm picturing it. I'm just picturing it. It's like this Krad, like it has all these tubes and stuff, and it could just use the tubes to fight, and eventually it does. But like for a while there, it's just swinging a corpse at him. Like, get. I'm laughing. I enjoyed it. I did like this story. But it's so this is a story I would say I'd give it like a B for being an individual story, but I'd give it an A for being part of the anthology. Do you remember why?
Yeah, because at the end the ship crashes into Earth, and it turns out this was the crashed ship that was mentioned in At Dawn.
I loved that. I loved that twist. I didn't see it coming, and it made perfect sense. And it, for the first time now it's only been a few stories, but for the first time I really felt like we were in the same universe. It was starting to tie things together, and I really loved that.
I don't think it lasts, though.
You are such a Debbie Downer. This whole thing is just going to be me reading the description and you being like, and me being like, but no.
I said, okay. First of all, I said thumbs in the middle, maybe slightly pointing up, okay? But we agreed before this podcast, okay? I was like, yeah, I didn't feel this part. Like, I like the individual stories, but the anthology of a whole just doesn't tie as well as I'd like it to tie together. And you were like, well, I'm glad I'm not going to be the bad guy for once. So I'm just fulfilling the role that was given to me.
I am glad I'm not the bad guy. I promise you, it's not just because JK bought me a copy. I actually do like it.
Oh, that's a good point. You are compromised. That's right.
I'm not impartial.
Yeah.
I will go buy a copy if that's what it takes to validate my opinions.
Anything more on the Nirvana? Oh, yes. This is where I was confused as to what a Krad was, because I thought they were cyborg creatures, and it turns out it was the ship.
It was the ship the whole time.
Oh my god.
So I kind of assumed that, because it is hinted that the Krad and the Teku are the same species before that, and we learned that a Teku is a ship.
No, they were descended from the same species, I thought. That's why when the Teku was a ship, I was like, okay, they must have uploaded their brains into ships, whereas the Krad decided to upload their brains into like humanoids and whatever.
That's an interesting point, actually. I hadn't considered this. You're right. That is probably the way it's described. I thought they were the same species that just had like philosophical, like I thought they were kind of like Vulcans and Romulans. They're exactly the same thing, but one of them is like obsessed with logic and the other one is obsessed with being kind of dicks.
Yeah, with being treacherous for almost no reason.
Yeah. And not even like super treacherous. They're just kind of like annoying.
Yeah, that's kind of what I got, because I think it was like they originally came from the same progenitor species, and they split off so much that they're basically two different creatures at this point, like us and apes or whatever. We all descended from the. Oh yeah, I'm gonna have to cut that because of the state that I live in. Oh my bad.
Well, you've given yourself away now. Now, let's move on. Eli 99244 by Tori Element. I kind of wondered if that was like a pen name. I wondered if he was British.
I was looking at the medical code. Oh, you're talking about the author's name. I was talking about the Eli. Okay, go on.
So this story is told from the perspective of an artificially intelligent computer program whose primary assignment was to study human mythology. The program's quote-unquote life is thrust into chaos when he is removed from the system and transmuted into a human body for the purpose of repopulating the Earth. So this one gets like a 0 points for the anthology. I have no idea how this relates to anything else in this anthology.
It raises so many questions.
That being said, I did like it. I would be interested in reading more of this guy's work. I just kind of like in my mind, I sequestered this like a program destined for transmogrification. This is not kind of part of the anthology for me because I could not figure. I read the entire book waiting for somebody else to do something like this, and I could not figure out what this was in relation to the Krad and Teku and
right.
I was like, is this ship God?
What are the implications? Yeah. Are all humans descended from machines that were put into these creatures and then shot at the Earth? Like, was it specifically to seed the Earth? And also, when was this? And like, why? And what is this ship?
Yeah, is this a Krad or a Teku? Like, this ship seems way more powerful than any of the Krad and Teku we've seen so far.
Right.
So the Krad and Teku we've seen so far, they seem to continue to have to go back to Earth to get more people. And while there are farms mentioned at like the tail end of the book, it's implied that eventually the genetic stock after so many generations runs low and you have to go back to the source. But this ship is seeding the source. So it has maybe done something that the other ones could never do. And also, what are the humans? Why are they empty vessels for computer programs? I was very confused by that.
Yes. It's something that it doesn't fit at all into the anthology, or it raises so many questions that it's like, why did no one else use these concepts in their stories?
Yeah, I mean,
the
humans would be much easier to control if you could just replace their just write over their personalities with AI that are programmed to just do what you want.
Right.
It was weird. It was weird. That being said, I really did enjoy his descriptions because it's told from the perspective of a computer program being ripped out of its system, losing all the interconnections and data flows that it had, and being stuck in a finite human form. And it does a really good job of describing that. And being a programmer, I ate that up. I really liked this from a sci-fi perspective. But as somebody reading this cover to cover, looking for like the shared universe, it was just, I was like, whiplash,
looking for
man.
God in spaceship form.
Yeah, I was. If this is part of if this relates more than I think it does, I need to know more. I need to know the deep lore of this universe. You know, I'm a sucker for that. Like, if this is actually like canon and it works in the other stories, I gotta know what was going on here. I did put in the notes. I would like to imagine that this is the prequel to Minecraft. That your Minecraft character is one of these computer AIs that was sent to rebuild the world. And that's why you know all these recipes and you can just transmute things into stuff.
That would be awesome, actually. Maybe they should talk with Tori Element. Anything else on EY 99244? Which, by the way, 99244 is a code for billing purposes in medicine. That's why I kept looking at it.
Good to know. It would throw out my British theory, I guess, because I'm assuming that's an American thing.
Oh my God. You've blown this case wide open.
Or an American who lives in Britain.
So The Apprentice by Lindsay Fairley.
How hard is it to say? Well, yeah, I guess it could be Fairley.
Yeah, you, Ben.
Yeah.
It's pretty difficult.
Sorry, I looked at how it was spelled, and I was like, it could be Farley or Fairley, or I'm sorry. A girl is apprenticed to her father, who is the village historian, a position of great honor. We learn quickly that this story takes place a good while after the 2020 reaping. While foraging for food, the apprentice finds evidence that the reaping was not a singular occurrence, and that these alien ships visit every 2,000 years. She tells her father, who takes the evidence to the town council. The council decides that the historian must carry this message to the people in the capital, but not everyone agrees with this decision.
It's alright. I liked it well enough. Alright, so The Art of Negotiating with Space Monsters.
What? No, you can't. I know you want to get there, but we gotta do our due diligence here, man.
So I did like it. I don't know when this is set. Like, is this in 4040 or is this in like 6060?
It's very specific about when it's set. It's set in 4025? No, 4035. No, 4025, sorry.
Okay, so the world basically ended in 2020 as we know it when alien ships came down and started taking everyone.
Yeah, because she specifically says it happens every 2,000 years, and that's going to be in 15
why didn't
years.
the world end in the year 20 when aliens came down and took everyone in spaceships?
That's what she found out, that there's like cave paintings and stuff.
Yeah, but I guess I'm not real sure on why did the world end in 2020 when alien spaceships came down if they come every 2,000 years?
I think you're nitpicking, but, well, I don't know. Maybe there's an explanation for that.
I don't know, maybe I am nitpicking, but it bothered me enough to bring it up. I wasn't just trying to find something to be upset about.
What makes me laugh is that there's another story. I think it is Harvest Time, where they find that the aliens came on Thanksgiving in 2020, and in a year they're going to come in Thanksgiving of 4040. And I was like, wow, the aliens account for like leap years and
Yes. And they use our calendar system that's based on our rotation around the sun.
And the day is supposed to get, over the course of a couple thousand years, it gets like a second longer, which is actually going to affect.
I also like that it's Thanksgiving in 4040. Like, Thanksgiving's still a thing. That's
American Thanksgiving in 4040 is when they are going to come.
That's a good point I never thought about.
Yeah. That is when the world ends. It always ends. Like, there's a GIF out there somewhere of somebody saying, like, Americans during alien invasions, and everybody's running around panicking, and it's, like, literally everyone else, and they're just eating popcorn watching it because the aliens only ever attack America.
And only on our holidays. You remember Independence Day? That's not a holiday anyone else cares about.
Britain cares. It's the day they lost.
Yeah, maybe for a different reason.
The Queen remembers. So, honestly, like, I give this one. You make a good point. It does raise a lot of questions, but this one almost felt more like fairy tale fantasy to me, just because of how it's set. Like, there's a village historian. There's these small villages. Everybody's
well.
Working with their hands.
That doesn't jive. Like, again, I like the story individually, but when I think about it, and this is before I even read Harvest Time, it's like, so in 20 years, we go from a village to everyone's living underground and we're training a militia to fight these guys. Huh?
I would need to know more.
And there's a resistance. There's a resistance around Seattle. And again, that doesn't jive with the next story we're going to read. In my mind, anyway. I'm sure they can both coexist. It's just something that's like, okay, who are the humans? What is their place in the universe? Are they living in ye old villages, or are they militiamen, or are they part of a universe-wide resistance? What is our place here? And I feel like that gets muddled with all these different takes.
I think you're right, but also I think I would like to know more. I think that's what this story, I would kind of like a novel of this story.
Yes, I agree. This is another story I would like a lot more on, which is not a bad criticism to have if that's your only criticism.
No, I mean, I'm interested in everything the author's doing with this one. I specifically I think it's great. Like, it's a perfect thing for me to have the main character be like an apprentice historian, and the historian is this kind of like, or it can be this kind of like Indiana Jones thing. I think there's room to develop this into like a full novel, and I'd be interested in reading more. Even if they do other anthologies, this would be one of the first stories I'd go to, is if there's a sequel to this. This was one of my top 3, I'd say. I'm going to surprise you with my top 3.
Maybe. I think
we've covered 2 of my top 3 now. Temple of Dogs is one of my other ones.
Let me think. Let me look at it. Not that. No. Teku of Dogs is, I mean, again, there's nothing I think was particularly terrible so far. I love your description of Harvest Time.
We're gonna get there. We're gonna get there.
You know what? I think I would agree. This is in my top 3. I wished I had more of it, but that's really my only criticism. I wish that they would have given me more of this delicious novel to eat.
I think everything you're bringing up about the timeline questions and the what is humanity's place questions is totally valid. But right now, I haven't seen anything to directly contradict or make them impossible. Right now, what I feel like I'm missing...
I don't... like I said, they can probably coexist.
Yeah, I
think
missing
it's just the way my mind
pieces.
is structured that it comes off as like something's not clicking to me. And maybe that's just a me problem.
Most of your problems are you problems.
That's true. Or Penny. I love you, Penny, but oh my god, I need to sleep.
You need to, like, these podcasts are gonna last forever on the internet, dude. Like, she's gonna find these when she's 20, and she's gonna like smother you with a pillow.
Well, okay, Penny. If you find these when you're 20, don't have kids until you're ready. Wait, like I think that age 30 was appropriate for me. Don't have them at age 20 if you're listening to this and you're 20.
Are you leaving
I don't think that's going to end well.
Leaving a PCast for your... That's a Harvest Time
I think
reference.
I think this one's in my top 3. Anything else?
No. Hey guys, it's Editor Ben here, and so here's the thing. The podcast ran a little long. I mean, we're planning on covering every story in the book, and so we're going to have to cut it into 2 parts. Now, Nate was pretty specific about how he would like this to be cut. He wanted it to be cut right here. And it makes a lot of sense. This is pretty much the midpoint. I'm so excited for you, our listeners, to hear this next one, and for one listener in particular who I hope is out there. So I'm just gonna let this run for a couple more minutes, and we're just not gonna tell Nate, okay? This is between you and me, guys, okay? I don't want anybody tweeting at him. I don't want anybody messaging him on Goodreads. We're just gonna, this is just a little secret from me to you, okay? So just enjoy this next bit. All right. I can't wait. It's gonna be so good.
All right, let's get into the art of negotiating with space monsters by our boy, Jakey!
This is the one that started it all for us. This is why we're here. This is the second look at Jakey's writing. And I'm gonna be real with you, and it's gonna sound bad because, you know, he bought me the book. I don't know how to honestly say this so that you guys will believe me. This is the other one in my top 3.
This is my number 1.
This is actually my number 1 too. I know nobody's gonna believe me because we were so hard on Duke Lagrange, and because we were
hey, I paid my $5 so that I could be a legitimate critic
I am
here, okay?
I am so not impartial, I guess, but believe me when I tell you, I would, like, if I didn't like it, I would say so. And I have already, I will tell you this, I've not changed my mind on Duke LaGrange. It is not my thing. I still don't like that book. This is much, much more my speed. This is much better in my opinion.
Yes, I agree. I was actually thinking, like, okay, J.K., he was a real good sport. I'll read one of his, like, later works when I have time, and I'll talk about it on the podcast. And then he just throws this in our lap, and I'm like, that will work.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to spend a little bit of, we'll probably spend a little bit more time on this one, and apologies to the other authors, but it's just the particular history we have with JK on the podcast, and that we do have, like, a story we didn't like to compare to a story we did like. A down on his luck, unsuccessful negotiator/ambassador is attempting to recruit sentient flower people to join the human resistance. When he gets a call to adventure, if you will, that a race of all-powerful alien creatures is about to be approached by the Krad. Our hero, Doug, is the only one who can make it there in time to plead the humans' case. But when he arrives, the Krad have already beaten him to the punch. Doug struggles to make his case, and if he doesn't speak quickly, he may not make it out of these negotiations alive. So let me tell you why Doug works and Duke LaGrange doesn't for me.
Great. I'll chime in after.
Yeah, this is the main difference for me. So, well, I mean, first off, this is like everything I liked about Duke LaGrange as far as setting goes. I like the wacky space bar. That's my favorite thing about Duke LaGrange. I like the wacky space bar and all the weird aliens. Like, I like the sentient flower people. So this stays in wacky alien territory. Love it. Second, Doug is a bumbling idiot like Duke LaGrange.
Yep.
But he's emotionally vulnerable.
Yeah, he's got heart.
Duke LaGrange is arrogant, egotistical. He's kind of like a Han Solo type. But he's never grounded in reality. At least in the first book. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say never. But at least in the first book, he doesn't get grounded in reality. The ninja does, Shiro Shei. But he doesn't speak, and so his stuff isn't... I didn't enjoy it as much. But Doug is a bumbling idiot who we also see, like we actually see him cry in this story. And that makes all the humor work. That's the anchor in reality that I needed to relate to this character. And once you've broken my shell, once you've got me caring about it, everything else works. And I'll admit, some of the humor, it's not my humor. It's your humor.
I liked it.
It's very much your humor. I felt like I was reading one of your stories at certain points.
Well, yeah, didn't I mention that, like, J.K. and I used to be the same person, but then some lightning struck our original body and we split off into two different people.
Did J.K. get all the muscle?
Damn it!
So, yeah, I really like Doug. I love the sentient flower people. I love how it turns out that at the end, so he has to recruit a race of space kaiju, which I was not expecting.
well, the thing is, he is basically looked at as a loser by his superiors. He has to recruit pacifists and flower people, which, by the way, I didn't realize how tall the flower people were at first. Because the Emperor, like, crawls into his lap, and I'm like, oh, this is getting a little weird.
Yeah, they're, like, literally the size of dandelions.
You're 5 inches tall. Yeah, you're 5 inches tall, dude. What are you going to do to the Krad? And so yeah, he's tasked with recruiting 5-inch tall dandelion creatures and space pacifists who aren't really going to help the military effort. He's kind of just put away in this useless area of negotiating with creatures that don't really matter to the resistance, right?
Yeah.
And I guess I should also get in there that never once did I have to ask if I'm supposed to like this guy.
No,
which I think was a criticism we had previously with J.K.'s other work. I knew this guy, I'm supposed to like him. He's a bumbling oaf, but he's got a lot of heart, and he's doing his best.
He's on this mission because he actually had friends who were sent before him who were captured by the Krad and believed dead. But then the Krad do that puppet thing where they resurrect the corpses of his friends and try to have them talk to him, and he reacts to that like a human being. He doesn't make a joke or anything. He still has like a sarcastic reply, but you see him feeling that, and that's what it needs to make the sarcastic reply seem heroic.
Yeah, and you also get a little bit of his backstory with those people, which I really liked. It helped humanize those people who are now food for the Krad.
Yeah. And I'll tell you right now, like, so I'm giving it, this is my top story because it gets an A for individual story, and it gets an A plus for lore building.
Yes, because we actually figured out some differences between Krad and Teku.
Yes, and what the human resistance is.
And where the humans were. Yeah, exactly.
I needed this story in so many ways. Like, this story comes, like, almost dead center in the book, and it is, like, the perfect middling point where, like, we needed some revelations here. We needed, and, oh my God, we needed a win. Like, I know that's the post-apocalypse genre it sucks. Things suck. And I know I'm a person who likes horror, so like I also like a negative emotion that people don't necessarily want to go out of their way to feel. I get it. I'm sure that works for somebody. It's not really my thing though. Like I stopped watching The Walking Dead because I was like, okay, yeah, it's not going to get better. Like there's no, they're just slowly, they're fighting the great loss. Like they're going to die. They're all going to die miserable. So
right.
Like foregone conclusion, skip to the end. But that's obviously, I'm not the right audience then because The Walking Dead is super popular and everybody loves it. But yeah, this was, the humor was very refreshing. I'm very glad he was in this anthology. A writer like J.K. in this anthology is really good to like recharge your batteries for the next couple post-apocalypse stories. And yeah, I liked everything about it.
Yeah. And do we want to...
Oh.
I guess we can just spoil the ending.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we'll go ahead. Spoilers for the end.
That was a great ending.
Yes.
Where,
set up and payoff.
So he... Yeah, exactly. He tells the Krad, like, I'm going to do my best to go back. Like, because the kaiju monsters say, we're not going to side with either of you. Get out of our space or we're going to attack you. And you have, like, an hour or whatever. And Doug is like, he tells the Krad, like, screw you, I'm going back there. I still have maybe, like, 15 minutes to convince them. And the Krad just effortlessly disables his ship. Like, his ship is a hunk of junk anyway, and the Krad just, like, slaps him. But then, like, the moon that's orbiting this planet turns out to be a space monster, and it bites the Krad and throws him into the planet, and the Krad gets annihilated, which I think is one of the only times we see a Krad just straight up lose a fight. And then they're like, yeah, we didn't really care. We didn't care about your word. It was the plant people, actually. They vouched for you because they're like, they have a symbiotic relationship with that moon monster. And so the fact that he had spent 2 weeks trying to convince these plant people to join, that was the introduction that also led to the payoff.
Yeah, the fact that he's like earnestly doing his pathetic best and that it finally paid off for him. Yes. And because you see him cry, you see him vulnerable, you see him care about his friends, you want him to succeed. That's what J.K. successfully built here. He made me want this guy to win. And so and it
made it so much sweeter when he finally does win.
Yeah.
And again, he doesn't win because his ship is better or whatever. He wins because he did his best to do his job as a negotiator with those plant people, and that paid off with him saving the day, basically.
Yeah, like it was just a guy putting in the effort, and it paid off, and that's just perfect. And like I said, and it is partially helped by where it is in the anthology, in that I was kind of desperate for a win.
Yes, this was a breath of fresh air.
And like I said, most of the people reading this anthology are probably fans of the post-apocalyptic genre. Most of these authors say in their blurb that they write post-apocalyptic fiction. It's not something it's not something I won't read. It's not something I seek out. I don't mind a post-apocalypse thing, but I usually need a palate cleanser afterwards because I don't like to dwell in misery. But this was the palate cleanser. This was a perfect palate cleanser, and it used that time to dump some exposition on you without feeling like exposition. And I did like the idea. Like I said, it was just refreshing in the sense that I like the idea that there are humans out there going on space adventures and not being slaves to the Krad and or Teku.
Right? Yeah, this was the peak for both of us.
Yeah, I'd say more of this. And it makes me think that maybe, I don't know, maybe we'd have to talk to J.K. about this and see if he thinks the same. But Duke LaGrange, I think, was his first novel, the one we read.
Right.
And so if this is the direction his writing has gone, I could be convinced to check out some of his other novels.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. Although this time you're going to have to pay.
Hey, well, I don't think he's going to buy us another one. I think he bought us this one because it goes to charity. So I will admit there were a couple of points where he's like, oh, he's talking about his beat up ship, and I kind of rolled my eyes. I was like, oh, here we go again. But then it pays off with the dog fight where the ship gets destroyed, and you're like,
effortless.
And you're like, oh no, his ship. That's the one thing he had. That was his memories of his friends. That was like I said, he bought us the book. He told us it could be another different take on.
No, he bought you the book. Okay, yeah. Let's get that
he bought
right.
The podcast, the book. But yeah, we thought it could be. He thought it could be a different look at his writing, and yeah, totally.
I agree.
It paid off
100%.
Yeah, so I know you didn't. He said he didn't expect a review from us, but you're getting one. I don't want to set that dangerous precedent necessarily. That if a person buys me their book, I'll read it, but
it does make us more likely.
It's on my Kindle. I am not fishing for books. If you want me to read your book, just send me a message and I'll take a look.
Yeah.
Yeah. Really liked it. Okay, guys, I'm going to have to keep this outro quick or Nate's going to get suspicious about the times. I do send him these podcasts to approve, but I have a sneaking suspicion he never actually listens to them. So I think we're going to get away with this. Okay. So, as always, check us out on Twitter at WABpod. You can check the blog for additional show notes and commentary at blog.wordsaboutbooks.ninja. And if you feel we deserve a little something extra, you can buy us a coffee at buymeacoffee.com/WABpod. And next month, we'll be reading Promise of Blood, so make sure to check that out if you're interested in the book club. And I will see you next time. Bye!